Welcome to the Raw and Wild Hearts, a place where the raw, the unfiltered, the wild hearts gather to celebrate triumphs and hardships, learn from each other, grow together, and break down a culture rooted in fear. We will talk, we will laugh, and we will lean on each other about everyday life experiences that we could all use a little support through, and then we'll bask in the wild, magical beings that we are. My philosophy is that by embracing the dark, we may just let in the light. I am your host, Lori Rising, healer, educator, writer, adventurer, retreat leader, birth defender, and animal enthusiast and activist, along with my wild heart sidekick Kitty, Jesus the Brave. We'd like to invite you to get excited about the Wild Heart Revolution. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. It's called The Future is Here, So Listen Up. We'll be hearing the unfiltered thoughts of the beautiful, growing, expansive minds of two of my favorites from Generation Z. We will dive into their perceptions of the current political climate, our climate change crisis, mental health care, gender identity, and so much more. I want to hear their passions, drives, and desires as they are coming of age in this technologically driven, politically divisive, and sometimes fear-inducing nation. Today, I am so blessed to welcome two guests. Hana is a 17-year-old music enthusiast who enjoys concerts and using heavy layers of sarcasm. Her dream is to make music and direct music videos very soon. Currently, she spends her free time practicing music, bouncing life ideas off of her sister, and fulfilling emo teenage stereotypes. And Mira is a 17-year-old high school student. She lives with her mom and her best friend in the world, her twin sister Hana. She's looking forward to the future with college studies that will eventually land her immersed in Japan, exploring, learning, and appreciating the rich Japanese cultural experience. For now, when she's not busy doing homework or attending meetings as a youth advocate, you will probably find her playing video games and drinking rose bubble tea. Welcome, Hana and Mira. Thank you for joining the Wild Heart Revolution.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you two know each other quite well.
A little, you could say.
Since the moment you were conceived.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember interacting with each other in the womb?
Not at all. All I know is that she ate all of the the nutrients in the womb, and so I got really malnourished. And I was close to being
sat
non-existent.
on top of you.
And so how does that translate today? Does she still nourish you? Does she still nurture you?
We share.
You share now.
Yeah. We learned to share.
So was Hana born first?
Yes.
Yeah,
2 minutes older.
2 minutes. All right. So I like to begin with a toast or a prayer. To the wild heart warriors in all of our light, especially our dark, and in all of our magic and glory. May we continue to elevate consciousness through humility, humor, honesty, gentle care, soul-wrenching growth, and ownership. And to us, and to caring for our future. Tea cheers.
And coffee.
And coffee. All right, let's have a brief history of you. I was here recently and we were chatting and we've been talking a lot about school because you just switched school systems and you moved your home. So tell us about the school that you started with, what schools have you been through? What school systems have you been through up until now? You're juniors in high school, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So growing up, when we moved to Portland, we started with Waldorf schools, so it's kind of, I don't really know how to explain it. It's kind of like this experimental education style that takes the teacher on a journey with the students. So through first grade through 8th grade, we had the same teacher, and the idea was kind of that you bonded with that teacher more and you kind of created a family.
So it's creatively based, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's drastically different from the public school system, which I feel like transitioning into high school made things difficult. Towards the end of it, we were all a little tired of it.
Mm-hmm. And so you felt ready to get into a different type of school system at that point?
Definitely. We, over the last few years, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, just middle school, we definitely strongly voiced that we wanted to leave, that we wanted out of there and to go to a different type of school.
So was that a hard transition going from something that's more creative and artistic and flowing to a more structured system?
We went to Milwaukee Academy of the Arts for our first 2 years of high school, which was very similar. And we had a lot of friends already going into it from Waldorf School that were going there. So it was still very art based, creative, accepting. So I feel like the transition was a lot easier than maybe we thought it would be.
Okay, good. So you felt like you kind of flowed into that new school while having some contacts and still having some consistency from before.
Yeah, I think the only thing that kind of took getting used to was technology. In Waldorf School, or I guess, or at least the one that like we were in, technology was completely banned. Like it was like we were in the past, like we used a what's it called? Is it like a white? No, it's not a whiteboard. A chalkboard. Yeah.
That's funny because all I remember is chalkboards.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
like,
seems to be a thing of the past, huh?
and we, like, even in like the earlier grades, elementary school, the school kind of advised parents to not let their kids watch movies or play video games or anything like that. And so then we transitioned into the art high school, and you use Google Classroom, like an online thing to turn in your work. You write all your essays online. You depend on technology pretty heavily, and I think that was definitely surprising at first and took a little bit of getting used to.
Yeah, was that a little stressful? Did you feel like you weren't up to speed with the technological advances?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, everyone was typing so fast, and I was like individually finding each key.
Uh-huh. How do you type now? Are you fast? Can you send a text message like none other?
I'm really quick on my phone. I'm slow on computer.
Uh-huh. Have you taken a typing class, either of you?
No.
Never.
Never.
So, do you type with like the regular with your hands on the keyboard with both hands, or are you using individual fingers?
I kind of, like, over the years, I devised a way that it's like kind of a mix of both, and I still have to look down at the keys. I cannot, like, I admire people that can type while looking like at the screen instead of the keyboard. I can't do that.
I think I remember like a little while ago there was some talk about not teaching cursive anymore. Have you written cursive?
We were required to write in cursive with blue ink pens through, I want to say, 4th through 8th grade. But I know a lot of people who cannot write or read cursive. The only reason we were taught cursive was because we were in that Waldorf education setting, and yeah, today, and like most of my friends they can't read my handwriting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. It's very different because that's all I grew up on. Like it was a requirement. Wow, that's fascinating to me, the change with that, with our technology. So now you're in public school, right? So this is your first year in public school?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And you just started about a month ago?
Yeah, a month and a half ago.
Uh-huh. And how are you feeling in that transition?
It's been interesting. I think seeing our past high school was a college prep school, so it was very, they pushed for you to try your best, try your hardest. They challenged you, and then some of the classes here are very basic. They don't really do much about kids who don't try because they want a high graduation rate ultimately. I think the biggest thing that kind of threw me off was how big it was. I think the freshman, like, incoming class had 400 something students, and that was the entirety of our old high school.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So you're a month in. Do you feel like it's becoming more normal?
For me, yeah. I started to make some friends, which I think was definitely, that's the biggest thing that's helped me so far. And I was also able to drop out of some of my advanced classes. At the beginning of the year, I kind of jumped into a lot of advanced and AP courses, and I didn't have any friends, and so it was just kind of too much to handle. But I've taken back the amount of tricky classes, and I'm starting to manage it a lot better.
Yeah, that's a lot to take on, going through the transition, leaving your friends, and taking on really intense classes all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And Hana, you made a decision, right, recently?
I did. I've been wanting to try online school since probably 7th grade when I started really just not working well with the school system, I guess you could say. And it's gotten to a point where the pros outweigh the cons quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm transferring in 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. I'm very ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Mira?
It's gonna be interesting. I joked about when I come home from school that she can have a ready-made meal for me waiting. But yeah, in reality though, it is scary because we've always done everything together. Even now we have classes with each other. We still have that interaction, and so to have her be doing something completely different, it's gonna be really weird.
Yeah, I imagine. This is probably one of your first big separations.
Yeah, and then actually, I want to say 3-4 weeks back, I decided to be a counselor at outdoor school, which is a week long. And before I left, Mira realized that's the longest we've ever been away from each other.
A week?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's been like 2-3 nights max, but that week was the first long separation, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, Hana, you're taking on a lot of even more intense transition in such a short period of time.
A little bit. I think after I get over this new transition, it will be a lot easier and a lot more calm, I hope.
Uh-huh. Do you feel not calm right now? Is that kind of the general feel of emotional presence in your body? Is like maybe I'm going to go with the word anxiety. Are you feeling anxiety?
For sure. I think my mental well-being does not get along with school, and I know that's the same for a lot of people. But it'll get to the point where I'm in class and I'll get super anxious and I'll just start shaking. Or before I'm about to go into a class, or also or getting up early and going takes so much energy, which I know, again, is the same for a lot of people. But I think I am willing to risk maybe some of the downsides of online school to try and better my mental health.
Yeah. So have you been feeling that just for a month or for years?
Years.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was when it was at its worst. I got through it, but the beginning of this year already, I was starting to feel just as drained as I was by the end of last school year.
Mm-hmm. And Mira, how do you feel? Do you have anxiety in school?
For sure. It's definitely not something that I look forward to every day or I'm excited for. And I can kind of agree with Hana where starting this school year, I was just as exhausted as I had at the end of last year. And that might just be being like halfway done with high school and your energy levels running out and you're just so ready to get it over with. But yeah, I think it is definitely, and all my friends can agree, it's a really big stressor. There's so much pressure to do good in school, and the pressure to go to college feels higher than it used to be. So yeah, it's definitely something that weighs on my mind pretty often.
It's not enough to make you want to do online school. You want to stay in the school system.
For now, yes. I think I kind of depend on the social aspect of school, getting to see the friends I've started to form relationships with. Really, I don't think I could go without that.
So I want to talk further about the school system and about mental health and what that looks like in your peer group. So I just read this article and it's called Gender Fluid, Hyper-Stressed, Politically Engaged, Connected but Lonely. What do we know about modern teens? And it's by Kayleen Barr. And there's a child psychologist, and her name's Betsy DeTheory, and she points to a shift of focus in schools toward hard subjects and away from arts and sport as one cause of increased pressure on young people. And what she says is, I would argue that the biggest damage has been done in the reduction of creative arts, sports, music, and free time. We know from neuroscience that young people are dependent on having time to play. That's how their brains develop, how they make sense of the world, and how they become healthy young people. Without that, their behavior changes and they act out or act in. And when they act in, they can self-harm and get depressed. So, and then she goes on a little bit later to say that connectivity is actually disconnecting people from real friendships and the opportunity to enjoy the world together. It's creating absolutely unrealistic ideals that young people can't get to. And that's referencing social media. So I kind of want to talk about, how does that feel for you? Because you were in a creative arts school, and then you moved into a public school system. But do you feel like the creative arts school, where you had more time for music and art and play and less structure, do you feel like you still experienced a level of anxiety or mental health symptoms in that school as well?
Yeah, for me, at the old school, there was a lot more artistic classes offered, but there still wasn't that, like, stress-free, like, aspect. There wasn't much free time. There was still a lot of homework. And so for me, I think my mental health going to that school was probably worse than it is right now, at least. It was, since it was also a college preparatory school, the classes were a lot harder, and there was so much pressure to go to college, be prepared for college, always be doing super good. Mental health was talked about, and they talked about how important it is, yet they didn't prioritize it in any other way than just talking about it. For me, I was still so stressed. Like Mira said, the expectations were extremely high. The pressure to do well, to go to college, to constantly, like, be on top of everything was higher than it is at public school. Another thing, kind of connecting to what you said about them talking about mental health, I know that the Portland public school system allows you to take mental health days, and that counts as an excused absence, which is a step in the right direction, I think.
There's the wild heart sidekick, Beezus the Brave, making an appearance. She likes to do that sometimes. So mental health days in the public school system. So you're saying that in the public school system, you feel less pressure than you did in your college preparatory school.
Right, as of now, yes. I agree with the article when she said that we need, like, time to play, and so even now, like, with so much homework, it is still hard to find that time to have a creative output or just, like, relax, spend some time to myself. But it's definitely, the pressure isn't as intense as it was.
Okay. So I really want to focus on the social media aspect. What is happening with social media in your peer group? How important is Instagram, Snapchat? I don't even know all the things that are happening nowadays. How important is Facebook? What's that looking like? Are people on social media throughout the day in school? Hello, Beezus the Brave. She's doing her co-host duties right now.
Yeah.
So what does social media look like for you? Beezus is making her way down onto their laps.
For me, social media is I have very mixed opinions. It's a great way of staying connected with not only your friends, but what's going on in the world. It's how I learn about, politics, but it's also very, very damaging to mental health. I think it's a big reason why there's been such a spike in anxiety, depression, you name it, in kids.
Do you equate self-worth with the amount of friends you have or the amount of likes you get on social media? Do you feel like when you post something and it doesn't get the response that you were expecting or that you hoped for, do you actually feel that shift your mental health and shift the way that you feel about yourself?
For me, yeah, it's not healthy, but I kind of have come to depend on social media for validation. So when, like, I post a picture of myself and it doesn't get as many likes or no one says I look cute in it, I feel kind of sad for sure. Like, it's something that our generation depends on so much for validation.
Right, or for friends. So what she's saying is you can actually end up being lonelier because you grew up with it. You grew up plugged into technology. It's very different from my generation because we didn't have it growing up. So we know the two different worlds. We know how they feel. But you pretty much only know that world of being plugged in and technology. But what you said before is that you went to a school where there was no technology. So you had a period of time where you didn't have a phone, where you didn't have any social media accounts. And that was until 8th grade?
We got our first shared phone in, I think it was the summer before 6th grade. Good old iPhone 4.
Hey, girl, I think I have an iPhone 5.
No hate. And it was the first time that we had been given access to technology, and of course it was very heavily monitored by our parents, but like I remember for the first while that I had that phone, like I always wanted to be on it. It was like so new, so interesting. I just wanted to, like, I would stay up late to watch YouTube videos. Like, it was super, like, it's all I wanted to do.
So did you oversaturate yourself with it?
For sure,
Immediately?
at first, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't allowed to get, Instagram, Snapchat for a little while longer. So we kind of were in a different part of technology and media at the time. It was more, like she said, videos, video games. That's when we started getting into, I want to say Minecraft was the first video game that we became super transfixed with. That's what we did.
Before that, though, we kind of grew up playing video games, like all the Mario games, things like that.
So do you feel like at this point, are you caught up with your peers? Are you at the same level of social media exposure?
Yeah, because things in social media happen so quick. It's kind of easy to get to that level and get caught up.
Mm-hmm. And Hana, how do you feel when you post something if, it doesn't get the likes or the comments that you were kind of hoping for or expecting? Does that change your self-worth or your self-appreciation, or does it hit your ego at all?
It does, and I wish it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
About a year ago, I took a couple-month break from social media, and it was very interesting re-downloading, everything after being kind of socially isolated,
mm-hmm.
and seeing, I remember thinking, why are people posting such an excess? Why are people posting so much about their lives and so many details? And it was a lot. It was an overload of information.
Uh-huh. It's so interesting that you just called it social isolation when you're off of social media. So that's the whole point of what she's saying in the article, is that we're coming to equate people who aren't actually our friends and who aren't in person with us. They're not authentically having a relationship with us because it's through technology. And she's saying that we're equating that with our self-worth. And so we're missing out on the one-on-one authentic connections that actually help fuel us and fulfill our souls and actually help our mental health. So I think you two have a one-up advantage because you have a built-in best friend, right, that you're always with. But you're still, even with that, you're still telling me that you're feeling the effects of social media. You're feeling how it actually does shift your mental health and takes a toll on your mental health. So I'm really interested if your peers, are they this self-aware of the social media effect?
I think most of my peers could say that and agree that they have kind of a love-hate relationship with social media, because it can really take a toll on you, but without it you feel like you're missing out or you're going to miss something.
FOMO. FOMO is real for many people of every generation. And I think that technology just really amplifies that for us because we see what we're missing, or we see what we're not invited to, or we see something that, isn't a part of our daily life that we want or hope or wish or expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you actively seek support out for mental health when you're feeling that from social media, when you're feeling that ego hit? Do you have an outlet? Do you have counselors? Do you talk to each other? Do you have friends that you talk with? Or does it just continue to take hits on your mental health?
The thing is, that outlet for most people is social media. So maybe you post something and no one says you look good in it. You go to social media once again, maybe you go on, your more private account and you rant to your followers.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that doesn't get attention, you get even more sad. If no one replies and is like, hey, are you okay? You get more depressed and upset. And
yeah, so you kind of see it as a cascade of effects. It just continues to take you down. So is this being addressed in schools? Are school counselors talking about this? Are teachers? Is it talked about in I even forget what they're called, seminars. I want to say seminars or school assemblies. Is there outlets for kids with the effect of social media?
Honestly, what's astounding to me is that the school system has accepted the fact that kids are so attached to their phones and social media that they actually give 5-minute breaks in the middle of class for kids to go on their phones because they can't go an hour and a half without going on them.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's really sad. So it's not as much of a recognition
Wow.
of how, damaging it is. It's kind of acceptance.
It's actually supported.
Yes.
Wow.
I know that social media being linked to mental health in general is definitely widely known. I know that mental health is one of the biggest problems with youth right now, and in Oregon, Portland especially, there's so many organizations trying to fix it and work on it. I mean, the law passed for mental health being an excused absence is just this year. This is the first year that you can have that. So things are being put into motion to try to help that.
Well, and Mira, you have more experience with that, correct? Don't you work at a youth advocate line?
Yes, I volunteer for a teen-to-teen crisis line. So teens, it's not just Oregon, teens from all around the U.S. or really we get calls from around the world, can call, text, chat, and they get support from someone their age. So I think there's only a few other crisis lines like that, and it's super unique.
How much do you hear from people calling in that they're being affected by social media?
The interesting thing is, and I was talking about this the other night with some other volunteers, is that it is never social media. If they're talking about the root of their problems, it's never social media. Which is so interesting because I feel like it seems like social media is this big problem, but whenever they're calling in, social media can be involved. Like, my friend unfollowed me, but they're more upset about their friend. Like, social media is never the main topic.
Interesting. Do you feel like it's underlying when you're hearing what some people are saying? So just even in your friend groups, when they're talking about issues or problems that they're having or why they're feeling anxiety or depression, do you feel like you can tell that might be the root of it?
Possibly, though. I feel like the biggest problems for them is always school, work, or family.
Okay. So for the two of you, if you were going to, say what might be contributing to your anxiety or when you have down days, do you feel like it could be work or school or social media, or do you feel like social media plays a heavier role in that?
I personally think social media is kind of feeding all of these other problems.
Okay.
If you are getting a lot of messages one day, you're going to be getting all these notifications. You're going to be getting, you're going to be
blowing up, girl.
Yeah, there's going to be, serotonin, happy stuff. You're going to have generally a better day. Or, with any other issue, I feel like a lot of the time social media is kind of lurking behind, whatever, or causing it to be maybe worse than it would have been.
Right, because social media is the outlet when we're having a bad day. And then if we don't get the response that we really needed in order to get that serotonin or that boost, then it just takes us lower, right?
Yeah.
So it can be the cycle of effects that continues on, and it can be a daily thing, a daily hit.
It's like having a therapist that is kind of dozing off and sometimes pays attention to what you're saying.
That's a great metaphor. So I want to segue with the mental health conversation and the social media being such a big part of that into Alice drills. Do you know what Alice drills are?
I think those are the active shooter drills.
Yeah,
right?
the active shooter response drills. Are you doing those in school at all?
I have never done an active shooter drill. We don't do them at the public school that we're at now, and we never did them at any of the other alternative schools. So
okay,
yeah,
there's a lot of coverage about them right now. I think maybe someone found out about some schools that are doing the Alice drills, and it just brings to light again our epidemic of mass shootings. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that and find out, how does that feel to you? Where are you at with the way that you process the mass shootings that happen, because there are so many in malls and schools? Does that affect you on a daily basis? Is it something that you're thinking about? Where are you at with that?
For me, it is really upsetting to one, think about that we've accepted that mass shooting rates are so high that we're doing drills for elementary students, even like really young kids have to go through something that terrifying. And even since drills are kind of constant, like it's being constantly put into their heads that this is something that could happen and that they always have to be ready for.
It's being normalized.
Exactly, yeah. And I also think that our generation is so desensitized to mass violence because we hear about it so often.
When I first, I guess, found out that school shootings were a thing, probably in elementary school, I was terrified. Like, I would get nightmares about it. You know, I thought, like, is this going to happen to me?
Sure.
But
yeah,
then,
of course.
Yeah. Over the years, as there's been so many, I'm almost ashamed to say that it doesn't really get an emotional response out of me because I'm so desensitized to it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the problems. And maybe, Mira, this is what you're talking about, that it's so upsetting that we've normalized it to the point where we're just doing drills in school instead of actually making big change, instead of actually changing our healthcare system and our mental health support, and actually changing our gun laws. Am I right with that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also frustrating to me. Like, it's upsetting, and then I get frustrated because I'm like, this is something, like, the answer is so clear.
And what's the answer? Tell me the answer.
We need gun safety laws. And I think there's been pushback, like, I just don't understand why it hasn't happened yet. People have been saying gun safety laws need to happen. It's been proven in other countries that once they put gun safety laws into action, there's been no mass shootings since they put in those laws.
Or definitely a reduction in gun violence and mass shootings, correct?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is that the counter argument is it's not the guns that are the problem, it's the mentally ill kids that are doing the mass shootings, because I think the majority of school shooters have had mental illnesses. But I was reading an article in English class, actually, and there was a speaker who was talking about this, and she said, the problem is not the kid, because if there were gun safety laws, do you think he would have done the same thing with a knife?
Right. Does this make you want to move forward and work to change gun safety laws? Does it make you want to get more active in making that happen?
Absolutely. I feel like I owe it to myself to stay aware of what's happening and engage in what's happening. And I'm working and I'm trying to work on changing gun laws on a legislative level. But I know it's gonna be a long fight. It's gonna take a lot of time.
Is there something specific that you're doing now?
Not currently, but I am working with Oregon's School-Based Health Alliance, and I'm hoping every year we go to the Capitol, we lobby. And so I'm hoping to, this year, what I want to talk to the representatives about is gun control laws and having them support that.
Mm-hmm. Great. You're close to 18. You just turned 17, right? A few weeks ago? Happy birthday, girls. But Hana, tell me, do you feel like you're excited to turn 18 because you'll get to start voting on issues? Is that something you look forward to?
I have a lot of mixed feelings about turning 18, but as far as voting, yes, I'm definitely planning on participating in that. It's kind of, right now I'll see on the news or in an article, I'll see, another mass shooting, and it's like, oh, shit, again.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel kind of a little bit powerless, kind of helpless about it, but knowing that I can vote and make a difference that way makes me feel like I'm actually doing something.
Mm-hmm. So do you both believe that voting can make a difference? Is that your belief?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think if voting rates were higher, then we could definitely see, higher in younger people, we could see a difference.
In this last election, I believe we had a pretty high younger voter turnout, which is really exciting. I think us adults get extra excited when the younger generations do get involved because you are the future. And a lot of us do actually care about that deeply. Even though it might seem like, with our fear culture and our mass media culture, it might feel to you like nobody really cares about what they're leaving you. Am I correct in saying that?
It really does, yeah. And I'm excited for this next election because I think our generation is going to be really involved, and I think it's going to be a really big election.
Is there anything that the two of you will be able to vote in the election?
Yes.
I just figured that out.
I'm
That's
excited.
exciting. Wow. I was just going to say, is there anything that you're doing to prepare, but you're preparing to vote?
Yeah.
I actually picked up my registration form last week, so I'm going to register to vote.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you can register early.
You can register when you turn 16 in the state of Oregon, and you're also automatically registered when you get your driver's license.
Fantastic. Do both of you have your driver's license?
I have backed out of the driveway probably 3 times. And I think I drove in a church parking lot and pretended it was Mario Kart. That's about it.
And I am terrified of driving.
Oh, okay. That's okay. You get around the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you bus it?
Yes. TriMet is our savior. We only started using TriMet, I think, freshman year, and it really opened a lot of doors, as in we didn't have to depend on rides everywhere, so we started going out a lot more and kind of became more independent.
Uh-huh. What were the safety features your mom put into place when you first started using TriMet?
Text me when you're there, text me when you're heading back, keep me in the loop.
So it's really just coming down to texting.
Yeah.
And that worked well.
Yeah, it did. And I think in Oregon, the public transit system is fairly safe. I know that closer to dark, there's definitely been some, you can find some sketchier people on the bus and, feel a little bit scared.
Tell me, do you have a safety plan for yourself if you get scared, if you feel vulnerable, if you feel like you're in danger?
We both have pepper spray.
Okay.
I am guilty of not really carrying mine around because I forget that I have it. But I think, Mira, do you still?
Yeah, I keep it on me all the time. And I wish I had more of a safety plan, but that's really it.
Yeah, it's a very good idea. I have a plan all the time. I spend a lot of time alone and I travel a lot alone. And that's why I feel so comfortable, because I always have plans in place. So let me just tell you, especially if you're on the bus or if you're around people, finding those friendly people and talking to them if you're feeling unsafe. We do actually have a really fantastic community and people do want to help each other. And I think the less isolated we make ourselves, the more safe and nurtured we can feel in any situation. So, if someone's making you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, pinpointing those people that you feel have warm energy, because we're so powerful as humans. We have so much magic within us that our guts are always right. So if someone's making you feel unsafe and your gut's telling you, then you need to honor that and move forward and have a plan of action and find the people that your gut tells you are warm and friendly and just start chatting with them. I chat with people all over the world all the time, and that helps me feel safe and comfortable in any situation that I'm in. I feel really strong right now of helping you have a plan in place.
Yeah.
So that's just the first one. There's other steps that we can take, but I think we do, even with our technological world, we become so much more isolated, and we forget that we are in a large community of people. We're all in this same life together. When we do it together, it can just elevate us so much more. And I guess something that I wanted to ask you is, do you feel like love trumps hate?
Always.
You do? Okay. Yeah. So you have that belief, you have that hope, that kind of magic within you that you believe that we can make mountains move with love.
Yeah, and I think whatever energy you're putting out is going to come back to you threefold. And so it kind of works in your favor to try to be putting out good energy.
So even with the fear culture that's around us, right? So we have a culture rooted in fear, and when we see the news and TV and the way people are talking, we do see a lot of hate and violence. Even through all of that, you know that we can change things with love and we can rise above the violence and hate with love. And do you believe that we can come together as a people and make great change for ourselves? Or do you feel like we have impending doom coming?
Honestly, a little bit of both. It's hard to stay hopeful when, through social media, once again, you're being bombarded with all of this, the world's ending soon, or like this war might break out, or like this person did this and it's terrible, people are dying. But I think it's also important to remember that there are so many people fighting for change, and even though it's going to take a lot of work and it might not be immediate change, it's something.
Yeah, so we have this, drama sells. And so any news media or outlet is going to want to sell whatever their product is. And their product is creating a lot of fear and drama so that you'll buy it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it is really easy to get swallowed up in the fear that's kind of constantly being thrown at us. But I also do think that our generation is going to come together and we're really going to change a lot of things.
Good. So you feel hopeful with your generation.
Yeah, I think, and even sometimes if I'm doubting that hope, like I know that I have to have it, because if I don't have that hope, then I'm just going to drive myself crazy. So
do you kind of shield yourself from news channels and media? I certainly do.
Yeah, I'm not one to watch daily news or anything like that, just because there is so much fear and sadness. But I do like to keep on top of bigger things, like if there's a water crisis going on in another country, or if there's a new law that's gonna make abortions illegal, things like that.
I think with social media, again, it's kind of impossible to avoid all of this news. And, news channels know that. They're using this kind of FOMO that controls our generation to shove it in our faces.
So do you know who Greta Thunberg is?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about Greta and climate change. How do you feel about climate change? Do you feel like it's real? What's happening?
I 100% believe that it is real and that it's a huge, huge problem.
Yeah, I also believe that it's real. We're already seeing the effects of climate change, and so we definitely need to act now. And I think Greta is incredibly powerful. She's spoken and stood up to so many people of power, and I think that's really incredible. And I think she really started the movement to stop climate change.
And I'm going to make a correction here. I think I said Greta Thunberg. I meant Greta Thunberg. So her name is Greta Thunberg. Do you feel like the awareness that she has brought to the subject matter is big?
Yes, we are actually learning about her in school.
Wow.
And I know a lot of other people are too.
Yeah. So how is that going? Tell me about it. Like, how are you learning about her? What's being said? How's that happening?
We've been reading her speeches and analyzing them. Actually, the walkout, I don't remember what day it was. It was on a Friday. It was a huge, huge walkout. It was, I think, one of the biggest ones that's happened. Teachers were actually encouraging it.
They were supporting it and they were telling you to do it. So did you walk out?
Yes.
Both of you?
Yeah, and it was on September 20th.
Oh, there you go. And so what did you do? Was there a rally, or did you just not go to school? How did that look?
After probably half an hour of first period, everyone walked out. We all bussed downtown with difficulty. It was very overcrowded public transport. And we all kind of gathered around City Hall. We listened to speeches and all kinds of stuff for about an hour, and then we marched. And, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of kids. We all marched.
Oh,
for a while.
good.
And during the march, we were chanting, like, we were yelling. There was also, and it was surprising because there was kids that were like 3 or 4 there with their parents, and that was really cool to see too.
Yeah. How did that feel? Did it give you hope being with your peers and being with that many people marching for a cause?
I think it's both a little bit sad because the fact that we even have to do this to try to get the attention of, people who can make a change, it's sad. But it is also, it makes me very hopeful to see how many people are motivated to making change.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you're having to go to such extremes to get the attention of policymakers. And so we only get to vote so often. And that's where I think we need to really pay attention to the people that are going to instill those policies that we feel, right? Because everybody gets to vote whichever way they want. And what I strive for the most in life is having full information. And so really getting good information, good scientifically backed information and facts, and then finding the people that also believe in the facts and the scientific information and hopefully supporting them, so that we can enact change and have policies that are put in place for the future, for the earth, for your future, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like Hana was saying, like the fact that we shouldn't have to be doing that. Greta actually, she starts almost all of her speeches with like, I shouldn't be here. I should be in school. And she's angry, she's angry that her childhood has been kind of taken from her because instead she goes around the world trying to get people to listen to her.
Right. And do you think people are paying more attention because of her age rather than if it was an adult trying to grab the attention of people and try to effect change in these policies?
It is more attention grabbing to see this teenager doing such incredible things and being so, powerful, but she's also discredited because of her age.
Yeah, so adults are trying to invalidate her. Do you think it's mostly because of her age?
I think it's because they're scared of her. She knows change is coming. She knows that we're going to make a change, and she's telling them that. And so they're scared to hear that, and they don't want to listen to her.
They probably have a little fear about the change for other reasons as well, right?
Yeah.
So people fear change because they fear losing something, they fear losing money or power. That's typically what it comes down to, right? So they probably don't want to hear it. And so because she's younger, they feel like they have a leg up on invalidating her because of her age, but it really comes down to their fear of loss of power or money or greed or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, this teenage girl is telling all of these companies and businesses that
she's basically telling them to turn their company upside down. Like she's telling them that they need to make a lot of changes, and for them that means a lot of money.
Right. So would you like to meet her?
Yeah, I think, definitely. I would want to have a conversation with her on how smaller communities can kind of form together to make a change and how we can come together as a generation to actually make more change.
Well, do I have a surprise for you? Just kidding.
It's not the Ellen Show.
I wish y'all could have seen their faces look at me there. It was pretty sweet. Actually, though, I really like that point that you're making. If we understand that we can all come together as a people, we can make huge change. We can do things immediately, but it just takes the numbers. It takes the community, and it takes everyone being on the same page, everyone supporting each other.
Yeah.
So that takes me to the political divisiveness that we have in our country right now. So are you aware of the two-party system that we have going on?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. And so can you tell that with this two-party system, which is Republican and Democrat, pretty much, we have available other options, but we really come down to that two-party system. Can you tell that kind of keeps us in a civil war with each other? Like, how does that feel to you? How does it feel when you hear about conservative versus liberal or Republican versus Democrat? Just tell me what that means to you.
For me, it's one of those things where, most of our family's from Texas, so, they have different political views. It's one of those things like, don't bring up politics at the dinner table or else, everyone's going to fight.
And how does that feel? Are you good with doing that? Are you okay with like, okay, yeah, let's enjoy each other and we'll just leave that over on the side?
I am a conflict avoider, so yes.
For me, it's just it's kind of interesting to, like, I'm not as much of a conflict avoider, and, like, I think it's interesting that generally there is that, like, never talk about politics with your family, like, kind of just, like, as a generalization, because I think it's something that we should be having conversations about, even if there's kind of that conflict. I think it could also kind of help break down the severe wall we have between the two parties and, like, that immediate disconnect between the two parties.
Okay, what about at school? Are your friends talking about politics? Is that a topic of conversation that comes up?
Yes, but more in the way of, oh, look, Trump fucked up again.
So you feel like people are just talking about the news of the day? It's not more about how do we change this two-party system? How do we actually get out of this civil war with each other? Is there any awareness around that?
I wish we could have more conversations about that.
Do you feel well supported in the school system on your beliefs and ideas and the things that matter to you?
For the most part, yes. I was really, really surprised on the day of the walkout when my teacher, I was doing the worksheet or whatever, and he came up and he was like, "Aren't you going to walk out now?"
Were you planning on it before he said that?
Oh, yeah, I just didn't expect, I don't know, I didn't expect that level of encouragement. He's like, "Well, you want to get out of here?"
Wow, yeah. You probably felt really supported, right? That probably really helped you, even be more proud of yourself for doing what you were doing.
Yeah, it felt more like I was doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the walkout last year on 420, our school marked every kid absent who left, and they did not allow you to excuse the absences as like a punishment kind of.
I think even then, though, even though there wasn't that support, there was the support of everyone else who was walking out, and so it still felt like we were doing the right thing, and like I was fighting for what I believed in. And so even without that support, like even if we stopped having support from people, I think support from adults, I think I would still keep doing it.
Right, because you have the fire and the passion to make this change. But doesn't it feel even better when you're validated by adults saying that you're doing the right thing?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's what we need. We need to be lifting you up because you are the future. You're the ones that are going to be affecting change and making the policies. We want you to have a wonderful world and a wonderful life.
Yeah.
So let's get into, I know we're kind of having the major theme of social media, but I feel like that probably is the biggest thing that affects our youth today. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it makes sense that this social media is tagging along with everything that we're talking about. But what I want to talk about now is what sexual identity and gender identity looks like in your group, in your youth group. So when I was growing up, it was a heteronormative culture, right? So heterosexuality was just assumed. Binary identification was assumed. So what's going on with that now? How does that look?
Things are very different.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was kind of like a private art school, the high school that we went to, first 2 years of high school. You know, you walked into a classroom and you were like, "I'm here and I'm queer," and everyone was like, "I'm gay." So it was really great. There was a lot of support. Everyone was very, very open about it. I feel that less in the public school that we're going to, but it's still there. I don't feel, uncomfortable with it. I don't look at someone and think, "Oh, they're probably straight." I'm like, "Oh, they're cute. I hope they're bi."
For me, like, I think when we were growing up, there was still that heteronormative culture around us and there was less awareness. And I think social media actually brought that awareness. And so over the past few years, it actually took a while, but I had to kind of unlearn the assumptions that I made about people and instead like trying to like not to assume anything about their identity or their character before meeting them and asking them or having them say something about it.
So is it a standard greeting? Is it a greeting where when you meet people, do you actually ask gender identity or sexual preference or sexual identity?
A little bit, yes. It's like, "Hi, my name is Hana. She, her pronouns. Nice to meet you."
Really?
Yeah.
So that's become the norm?
Pronouns are now kind of expected along when you introduce yourself to really normalize the fact that not assuming pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how long has that been going on?
For me, a few years, when I started volunteering for places, they would be like, "Okay, so say your name and your pronouns," and it just kind of became normal to me to introduce myself with my pronouns.
Is there ever a time where you meet someone and you introduce yourself and you use your pronouns that you feel like you get backlash, or you feel like there's a discomfort that happens in their response?
I personally have never gotten that, but I do use she, her pronouns, which people look at me, they see, oh, she's feminine, and so they can accept that.
Is there always an automatic reply of their pronouns as well? Or is there ever a discomfort for them to even talk about pronouns? I'm trying to gauge how normal this is kind of across the board in your peer group.
There's definitely times where I introduce myself with my pronouns and it's not reciprocated, but that's usually by adults. Whenever I'm talking to like people my age, if I introduce myself that way, they'll usually be like, oh yeah, my pronouns are such and such.
I know it can also be tricky for people who are still figuring out their pronouns. There's kind of this pressure to like decide on, your identity and what pronouns, that kind of thing. And actually, just a little anecdote, I guess, when I was at outdoor school, one of the other leaders there went by they, them pronouns. And so, that was cool. Everyone was comfortable with that. And then before the kids arrived, one of the other teachers talked to all of us, and she said, I respect everyone's pronouns here, and, that's fine, but we can't bring up pronouns with the kids in case we open up a discussion about gender identity that they're not ready for yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of upset me because the student that preferred they, them pronouns was not allowed to go by they, them pronouns, so that we didn't have to bring up that conversation with kids that have not thought about that yet.
Right. And that's it's a tricky line for counselors there because of parents and, how parents would feel about that exposure without making that decision on their own. And I think that we deal with that a lot with the school system, with any kind of school system. What kids are exposed to in the school system if their parents or their home life haven't gotten to that yet or wasn't planning on getting to that. So it's interesting. So you feel like you would have preferred to actually open that discussion up, or did it make sense to you?
I did understand the desire to not get too, I guess, deep with the kids, or, open up discussions that maybe their parents didn't want them to have yet, or things their parents didn't want them to have to think about yet. But at the same time, I felt that it was disrespectful to the people who did prefer they, them pronouns, because, it's this whole week and you're with all of these people, and I can imagine that's uncomfortable.
That's so interesting to me that it's been going on for 3 years now. Because in my adult life, there's an awareness, of course. I'm aware of it. I have lots of friends that are aware of it. I see it on my social media, but there's not a normalization of actually talking about your pronouns when you meet people. I think that's just telling of what's happening with the Generation Z compared to our generations, that you are so much more active and proactive in making things happen and in being open and in acceptance. And I think that love is really shining through in that way. I'm just so impressed. I love it.
Yeah. And I guess going back to like what Hana was saying about the outdoor school counselors, I found like I didn't know about that. And I actually find that interesting because I feel like that's one of those things that I find it interesting that they mentioned like age appropriate, or like it wasn't age appropriate for them to learn about it. Because I feel like in today's age, it's one of those things that kids should be learning about and like having conversations. And because I think it is shied away from because parents find that conversation like uncomfortable or don't want to talk about it. But I feel like they need to be uncomfortable, and like gender identity and just identity in general like is something that I feel like younger kids should be knowing about, because growing up they're questioning their identity and like who they are, and like it starts younger than people think. And so if they kind of know about it, they might feel less alone, because if it's more talked about and more people share their stories, you're going to feel less alone. But if you haven't learned about it before, it could be a much harder journey, I think.
Right. As you're talking, thought on that is that with your generation, whoever decides to have children will probably automatically have those conversations right away.
Definitely.
Like where the kids don't even know any different.
They're going to grow up reading children's books about the two princesses that fell in love and got married.
Oh, I love that.
It's
That's
just
such
gonna
an
be
aspiration.
normalized. Yeah.
So you believe that it's, we are going to start having that as the regular curriculum, as the regular lifestyle.
Yeah, because I don't think it's normal anymore to grow up in a heteronormative culture and then kind of let them like wait until they're older to have that conversation. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm kind of blown away by that. I'm really excited to hear that. I'm so excited for your generation to really take the reins, like take it over, do this.
Me too.
Like have such inclusivity. That's really what we're talking about here. So we talked a little bit about gender identity. I'm also curious about sexual identity. Is that something that's become more normal to talk about immediately? Your sexual preference?
Similar to introducing yourself with your pronouns, it's something that if you're, comfortable with it, you might put it in your Instagram bio. Like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is my sexual preference. I think there is more of, I guess, a fear.
It would be hard to put yourself in a certain box at this point.
Yeah.
It's important for people to know that it's okay to be questioning. It might take so many years to really figure it out, and I don't think that there should be so much of a pressure to like decide, because I've known people who have, switched back and forth and changed things around, and they get judged for that, but they're just figuring things out.
Sure. Aren't we all?
Yeah.
I think I told you last time we hung out, like the one thing you can count on, and you answered each other, which I loved, but the one thing you can really count on is change. And we're always changing. If we stop changing, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
I love the word questioning, not only in sexual identity, but for everything.
Yeah.
Even politically, I can be questioning all the time. Maybe I'll agree with some policies of a conservative person. Maybe I'll agree with some policies of a liberal person. Like it can be fluid. If we move towards fluidity in everything in life, I think we can stop being so, I don't want to say dramatic, but so negative, because the negativity really comes from judging each other or something or a word or, and we can really get more fluid and open with each other and much more inclusive in all aspects.
I think along with that, coming out has evolved. It's changed, at least in some places. In Oregon, even just in Portland, it's a very accepting area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more chill. It's not like, like, Mom, Dad, we need to talk. Like, the way I came out to my dad was we were at Pride Parade, and I was like, hey, can I borrow $15 to buy a pan flag? And he was like, oh, okay. And there's a bit, it's from a movie I like called Love, Simon. And all these kids, they sit down with their parents, and they're like, I have to tell you that I'm straight. And their parents start crying, and they're like, why didn't you tell us sooner? And I think that's funny, but also kind of, maybe that should be a thing. I don't know. Maybe it should be more of a conversation, even if you do identify, even if you are cis, and even if you are straight.
Mm-hmm. So do you two have a lot of conversations with your parents? Because I hear you both talking about, you're saying like, I think these things should be a conversation, and they should be conversations early on. So do you actually enact that? Does that happen in your home life?
Like sexual identity wise, or just in general?
Sure. I mean, we'll go with sexual identity, but also in general.
Yeah, I think for like sexual identity wise, like it's kind of loose conversations, not too serious.
I do agree with that. It's less of serious conversation based solely about sexual orientation, sexual preference, and it's more like, I saw a really cute girl today. And like, toss it in conversation.
So you'll just, that's kind of what you busted out with in the beginning?
Yeah, and I think we're privileged to be able to have such free conversation, because even while we're working on becoming more accepting, there are a lot of people who can't be candid about themselves, like around their family.
Yeah, and you feel really comfortable in that. And you feel like you have this blessing of having a family that you can come to and talk to about anything.
Yeah, I feel really lucky.
It is. It's a very special thing. And I think the more that we break down these walls of fear, the more people will be able to start doing that, because the younger that we can have those conversations, even hard conversations, but feel supported and nurtured, the more healthy we are in general. And that can be physical health, mental health, our outlook on life, our belief in community and people. So we really do need to start changing that. When people call into the hotline, are they saying that they don't have anyone to talk to? They can't talk to their parents or their family?
Yeah, most of the time they really don't have anyone to talk to. And one thing I always like to say is like, hey, it was really brave of you to ask for help, because that's something, especially when you feel like you don't have a lot of support, asking for help is one of the hardest things to do.
I think that the more brave that we all realize that we are and become, the more we can really change a generation. We can change life. We can change our communities. We can find that unconditional love that we've talked about a little bit.
Yeah, I really agree with that.
Do you feel like if something's coming up for you, do you easily talk about it?
For me, that has been an issue. I usually don't talk about my problems, and if I do, it's probably to a friend through text.
Mm-hmm. So you're having meaningful conversations through text? Is that the norm?
Yes.
Does that feel supportive?
I think yes, but also going back to seeking validation through social media. I mean, I definitely do that too, and it's very damaging.
Mm-hmm.
It can be bad if you seek it out in the wrong way.
I think it can, conversations through text can be supportive, because, I mean, the most common way that the teens reach out to the crisis line is through text, and we've had really serious conversations. We've had all sorts of conversations where we can like give support, and where it's like healthy conversation where they can be like, wow, I feel a lot better. So it like Hana was saying, it kind of depends on how you do it.
Right. So you feel like a lot of kids reach out through text because they're more comfortable going that route, using that form of communication?
Yeah, I feel like talking in person is scary. Even a phone call is scary. And so it can be easier to reach out in that way.
Right. Your generation did grow up with technology and social media, that the norm is not having vocal conversations.
Personally, for me, phone calls make me anxious.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I like having time to get to decide what I'm going to say.
Interesting.
Through text.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even think about it that way, but that's so true, because you can take as much time as you want to reply in a text, but when you're in a phone conversation, there's no lag. You've got to be on. You're just constantly going back and forth.
Yeah, I can agree with that. If you're also kind of like in a crisis and you're texting someone, it's easier to text as well. And phone calls are really scary. Whenever we get a phone call in the crisis room, my heart's like,
Oh,
really
even for you on the other side.
Yeah, because I know that I have to respond
Mm-hmm.
immediately with support.
Uh-huh.
And so that's scary too, to be on the other end of that.
Wow, it's really interesting, because you grew up just solely with that response time. That's so different. Wow, I just never really thought about it until you pointed that out, Hana.
But I also think, like, for more serious things, if you're able to talk to someone in person, that can be really powerful. Like, even if they don't say anything, like, the silence can be powerful. They can just, like, be there for you. So I think when possible, it's so much more gratifying to have that in-person support.
Yeah, it's much deeper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's much more authentic. You feel it in your soul in a different way, correct?
Yeah.
Even if it takes a lot of bravery.
Yeah.
It is funny, because being on the other end of that, if someone is going to tell me something important, I prefer that it's through text, because then I have that time to, like, process what they said and form, really a perfected response.
So I'm going to segue this into dating. So what I was just thinking about is like, oh, if you're going to break up with somebody, or if somebody's going to break up with you, is that happening over text, or is it happening in person? Is it happening on the phone?
For me, it has always been through text.
Always. So is that comfortable for you, Hana?
There's kind of this, whole thing of like, oh, so-and-so broke up with you through text. That's awful. But like I said, I almost prefer it, because then I can kind of have time to process, I guess. I don't know any different. It's the only way I know personally, so I can't really, I guess, speak on that too much.
How about you, Mira?
For me, I have been broken up through text before. My poor little 8th grade heart was broken.
Oh, buddy.
So it was hard.
Yeah, and I've also broken up with people in person, and I think it's a really interesting difference, because over text they'll say like, we need to break up, and like there's usually not a big conversation about it, but in person, at least from my personal experience, there's a big conversation about it, and it's a lot. You don't really have, like, when you get a text saying we need to break up, you go to your room and cry, but if someone tells you in person, you have to like regain some sort of composure because they're still there and you have to like talk about it. So it's really interesting.
Do you think that it's more supportive to get deeper in person? Does it help you process through and understanding their feelings or where they're coming from? Does that change the way that you cry about it?
I think it's nice to have closure because like once you've healed, the like biggest thing that's going to come back is like, oh, but why did they break up with me? And you need that closure. But like if you're able to have a conversation about it in person, you usually get more of that and you're more at ease when you're like on the journey to healing from it.
Right. So you see a much bigger difference because you've went through both ways, and you see a much bigger difference in your process work, whether it's text or in person.
Yeah, definitely.
And Hana, you've only done text, so that's all that you know. So you don't know what it would feel like if it would be in person.
No. And I think my preference to text is just the easier way, comfort. But I think if given the opportunity in person, especially for someone, if it's someone you really have this deep connection with, if it's a very serious thing, it should be in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you willing to try that sometime?
Sure. Yeah.
So let's just talk about dating. Tell me about dating at your age. What's happening?
Dude, high school dating sucks.
I think dating in high school when you're getting into those like first serious relationships is so different. And especially today, because there's kind of there's almost like a stigma around dating someone in high school. It's like, oh, you're never going to go anywhere type thing, that people have just started to kind of have open relationships. So no one really wants to be like committed, or most people don't prefer to be in a committed relationship in high school. A lot of people have kind of said, or I don't know how to word that, like a lot of people that I know like to kind of casually date, which I think has also kind of happened because of online dating. That's kind of started this whole like casual dating thing.
Yeah. So is the word polyamorous floating around in your peer group?
Yeah, for sure. Polyamorous, friends with benefit. We're not actually dating. We're just sort of dating, like all of those things.
How about ethically non-monogamous? Have you heard that?
That's never heard that one.
That's an adult one. Yeah, that's what we get. We get ethically non-monogamous as well as poly. So how does that feel? Do you feel like that's something that's comfortable for you? Is that a desire for you to be non-monogamous and be, more fluid in your relationship?
It all really depends on what you want and what your preferences are. I think casual dating, if both people are into it, is great. At the same time, part of me is sad that, dates aren't really a thing anymore. You meet someone, you think they're cute, you exchange social media, you text, and, that's the main part of the relationship. I know that's not true for all, but it's not really the, go out to a diner type of thing
so
anymore.
There's really not much physicality happening in dating. Like, you're not physically together. It's mostly over social media.
For the most part, if you're in an open relationship or friends with benefits, you physically meet up for the sole purpose of just hooking up. Which I don't know, it's very like disconnected, and it might just be because like we don't want to get attached or anything like that. But I've never actually been on a proper date, so
same.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so neither of you have been on a proper date.
I'm trying to like think if there ever has been anything, but I don't know.
Are either of you looking to be on a proper date?
I'm sure it'd be nice. I'm not really looking for a relationship or even really anything casual right now because I am more focused on, transitioning to online schools, spending more time figuring that out before I really get into anything else.
Good for you. That's really healthy. It's a healthy way to go through transitions. And, a lot of times we can distract ourselves with dating or attention or things like that. So I'm really proud of you. That's brave. I'm just going to keep talking about brave now because I love that word so dang much. How about you, Mira?
I think for me, I am trying to stop confusing lack of physical intimacy to wanting to date someone, because I feel like for a while, like the first few years in high school, I dated people because I was just craving physical intimacy, and that was kind of my reason. But yeah, right now I'm not really interested in any type of relationship, though I think it would be fun to just kind of go on like a date with a friend, just to, I don't know, just for fun. One of my friends actually offered, she's like, oh, you've never been on a date, let's go, just for like fun, pretty much.
Yeah.
Friend dates.
Friend
Yeah,
dates.
yeah.
They're the best. They are the absolute best. And you can still have intimacy in friend dates. You can hold hands. You can hug. You can be intimate. I think the closer that we get with people, you know, the less fear that we have around each other and the less isolation that we have together. Obviously consensual, always consensual.
Yes.
Yeah, we know that. But that's such a high level of awareness. I'm so proud of both of you. That's really amazing. Like, even in my adult life, you know, it took me time to figure out like, oh, I just really want physical intimacy. I just am craving that. And it's not even that I'm ready to date or that I'm in the space to have a full big relationship. I just need more intimacy in my life. And your friend group can bring you that intimacy. You know, relying on your friends and actually asking them to spend time together, to hang out, to fill that void is really very healthy.
Yeah, it's become super normalized in our generation to like hold hands with your friends, like cuddle with your friends, like it's accepted more. And I mean, I love cuddling with my friends. It's my favorite.
Oh, cuddling is the best, right?
Yeah.
So you hold hands with your friends. Do you tell each other you love each other a lot? Do you tell your parents you love each other? Is that a normal conversation?
With close friends, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who it is kind of a big deal to say I love you, and maybe they reserve that for romantic interests, maybe not their friends, and that's cool too. Like if that's how you want to go with it. But I make a point of making sure that my friends know how much I love them.
And how does it feel when they tell you they love you?
It's very nice.
It's the warm fuzzies, right? Mira?
Yeah, it's really nice. A few weeks ago, one of my friends, just out of the blue, like I hadn't talked to them in a while, they were like, I love you, Mira. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. I love you too.
Right.
So cute.
It can change your day. It can change your week. It can change your relationship. It's really important to put focus in that because we've become so busy. I can only imagine how busy you are as high school students, but you know, our lives are filled with deadlines and homework and papers and jobs and extracurriculars, right? That we can lose that intimacy. And that's really the fuel for creating a happier environment and a more supportive community.
Yeah, definitely. You release stress, you get that dopamine rush, serotonin. Yeah, I definitely agree.
And again, consent is
Yes.
so important. As you were
Very
saying.
important.
Yes.
Consent is definitely the key.
Yeah, even with, hugs, anything like that.
Also, touching on consent, I think for so long it's in like families, it has been like expected, like, give me a hug, give me a kiss on the cheek, like, and it's, if you say no, they're like, give your grandma a hug. And that's like the interesting thing, because I feel like consent should be kind of like taught from even a younger
Right, that
age,
feels a
yeah.
little forceful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel that way with my nephew. If I want to give him a hug, if he doesn't want to, I just say, hey, it's his choice. If he
Yeah.
feels like hugging me, I want him to want to hug me. If that's what's going to happen, I don't want him to feel forced to hug
yeah, I'm
me.
glad you don't push that, because then it doesn't harbor love. It harbors
It's
like
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. It can definitely foster discomfort, and someone can actually go more inward and go the opposite way than becoming more ready to hug somebody or more open about it.
Yeah.
So what's happening with online dating? Is that a thing?
I think unintentionally, all social medias are dating apps, at least for our generation. We're not using Tinder or any of that. I mean, we can't, not 18 yet.
Right.
But I've met so many people through Instagram, Snapchat, whatever.
So there's no specific dating apps happening, but are you on Facebook at all? Is Facebook a thing? No?
Our generation considers it the older person's social
people.
media. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad. That's great. So you're more on the accessible social media like Instagram, Snapchat.
yeah.
Is there something else that I'm missing? Those are the major ones.
Instagram and Snapchat are the big ones, yeah. There's definitely some unwanted attention from that, like creepy old dudes being like, hey, baby, let me sugar you up. I'll pay you money,
What?
stuff
Wait,
like
what?
that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's happening? This is happening?
Yeah,
creepers
so
on Instagram.
because the downside of that is there's, some creepy people on the internet, stalking young girls' profiles. And so, like, I think it was like a year ago, I had this like dude he was like, want to be my sugar baby? And I was like, no.
Oh my gosh. What is his name? What's his handle?
I don't know. I blocked him.
It's so normal to get weird or
really?
like get messages from Instagram accounts.
Though you can have on Instagram, you can have your account on private, so they can't see any of your posts until you let them follow you.
Oh, right. Are you private?
No, because I was private for quite a while, but then when I started getting involved with all the volunteering work and like wanting to build my platform so I can like educate and influence like my followers on like what I'm working on and what I want to like educate people on, I made it public, and that's when it started happening a little more often.
Do you feel safe?
Yes, because I am careful. I don't reveal my age. I don't reveal where I live, anything like that. I don't reveal my full name, and so I can just simply block them, and then they can't see what I post anymore. They can't message me anymore, and they don't have any of my personal information.
And that feels okay?
It's usually a case of, they'll message you kind of hoping that you will respond. If you block them, they're like, and they move on to the next person. It's usually not an intense case where they're like stalking you and trying to find out where you live. If it was something like that where they start threatening you, of course, I mean, that's
911 people.
Yeah,
okay. It just has become normal for you to just block people who send weird messages, and it doesn't affect your psyche. It doesn't affect your soul.
It makes me laugh because I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And I just like block them and move on with my day.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that makes me happy, but I still want this person's handle.
Don't remember it.
I don't know. I'm not into this. I want to be in your Instagram blocking people before they even get the message through. It's just frustrating to me that I'm hearing this, that people are trying to prey on the youth and young women, and I don't like it. Don't like that a lot.
Yeah, it is really common, which is also like why, like, as a minor, I have to be really careful about like what I'm posting and what I'm putting out there.
Okay, so you're actually paying attention and reviewing your posts before you put them out into the ethers. Okay, so as you're talking about like this is really common, how much awareness is there around? Because you two just seem so aware to me. Like you really seem to have this great level of groundedness in the way that you're interacting with the world. And I'm trying to just pick up on, is this happening in all of your peer group? Obviously, it's not going to be everyone, but are people approaching situations with this kind of awareness?
I think so, yeah, because with social media, we are all so much more aware of things.
Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going with this, that I'm so happy both of you are really taking the time to increase your awareness around that and increase your awareness around safety in interacting with the public, in being online, in dating as well. I think it's so important to have plans. I know I talked about that before, but really having plans in place in any of these aspects. So, okay, good. So you're vegans.
Yes, but I need to get back on track.
Do you feel pressure to get back on track?
A little bit, because I, call myself vegan, and I think I should either, get back on track or use a different label, I guess.
For me, since I'm lactose intolerant, it's pretty easy for me to stay on track, though. I'm not sure, like, I feel like I'm sometimes vegan because I've started letting myself have a cheat day, either every Friday or Saturday, like, I'll decide, and that's just when I let myself have something that might not be 100% vegan, just to congratulate myself.
To have a treat.
Yeah.
So how important are labels to you? What about fluidity? Is there room for fluidity or questioning in your dietary preferences as well?
Yeah, you could say I'm questioning vegan. I think my pressure to adhere to the label comes from, there are people who are vegan and they're so good about it. And I almost feel like it's disrespectful for me to continue to call myself vegan if I'm really not.
Do you feel like it's okay to kind of drop that label and just be whatever you're doing at that moment? I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel a need, like a drive to have a label?
Not too much, mostly just for purposes of people who want to know my dietary needs. If
like
they're
for
like,
clarity.
do you have any dietary restrictions? And I'm like, oh, I'm vegan.
Mm-hmm.
I also eat eggs and fish.
Is that what you usually say?
Yeah.
For me, I kind of do like the label of being vegan, and I want to stick to it because since I am volunteering for a few different organizations, when they like serve us lunch, I'm one of the only vegans there, and so they have to go out of their way to get me that option, and so it makes me feel guilty when when they go out of their way to get me something vegan, and then I go home and like eat cheese, something like that. But at the same time, I also like rely on that label, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I guess I'm just feeling, I'm hearing a pressure with the word. And I get that because, we do put a lot of power behind words and words are powerful. But I guess I wonder, do you put a lot of pressure on yourself to stay with a label instead of shifting or changing? Or does it feel okay to leave a label and change your lifestyle and take on a new label or take on no label? Does that feel okay, or do you feel like I need to stay with something?
No, I feel good about shifting around. I'm formulating a word for vegan that eats egg and fish, and so far I have vega pesca eggetarian. It's not finalized.
I love it. It's a good one.
Or maybe
It's very inventive.
Vegetarian that strays away from dairy. I don't know. We'll see.
For me, I do kind of feel like I have a hard time shifting from labels, and I definitely feel pressure to have labels. I don't know if it's just intergeneration or just in general, but I feel like there's this pressure to know what's going on in every sense and have a label for everything. Or maybe even personally, I just want to have a label for everything, so I'm not like in this unknown area. Like having a label like is comforting.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think I am working on like being less hard on myself about those labels.
Right. So you feel like you're not in a state of flux.
Yeah.
Like there's less confusion if you have certain labels. So that's what I'm kind of getting to as we're having all these conversations and moving through these themes. The theme that I'm sensing is labels are a very important piece to gender identity, to sexual identity, to dietary lifestyle. I don't remember if there were many labels in politics for you yet. I'm just wondering, is there a pressure for labels within your peer group?
I mean, a lot of this really is all about labels or lack thereof. And there is pressure. I feel like there shouldn't be. Like I was saying, it's okay to like not have a label or not know what's going on or be like, questioning or figuring things out. But when someone asks your pronouns or whatever, I mean, they want a response. Usually, they don't want, like, I don't know.
But questioning is an okay response, right?
Yeah, of course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's really confusing because there's that acceptance of not knowing what's going on, but then at the same time, there's still that pressure to have a label, and when you have that label, there's the pressure to live up to what that label supposedly means.
Right.
And entails.
Yeah, because I think in your generation, there is such a form of activism. And in order to really be clear about your activism, it's like you need a label in order to know exactly what you stand for and exactly how you're moving and exactly how to tell people what you're doing or who you are or what you're supporting.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think another issue is some people like to tell other people what their labels should be or can't be. So, if someone identifies as bi, another person might say, oh, you've never kissed a girl. You don't know if you're bi, then you shouldn't identify as bi. Or like,
so there's a lot of judgment is what you're saying.
Or like, did you just eat a piece of cheese? You're not vegan.
Mm-hmm. Right. And honestly, you're at the age that you should be questioning everything. So maybe it could even be a little bit of a hindrance. If you're feeling this pressure under a label, when really you have so much time to figure out who and what you are. And honestly, like I feel like there can be much more fluidity in that. So I'm just kind of comparing myself to you as we're talking about this, because I've really, like, labels to me are pretty non-existent. I'm sensing that there's probably a lot of pressure behind that in the community, but I can also see how it can really move you towards action in certain ways as well. And maybe that's social media again. We can come back to that because you're putting so much online. Those are words that people are reading. So it's kind of like it's an automatic label. Is that right? Like automatically you move towards labels when you're typing out who you are, what you believe in.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's something that we go to define ourselves is using labels.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I like to ask everyone the same question at the end of the show for each of you. Let's start with Hana. Hana, if you had a podcast, who would your dream guest be and why?
The first name that comes to mind is Robin Williams, because
Oh, interesting.
first of all, his voice is so soothing to me, and he seems like such a sweet, nice person. And I love him so much. And I don't know, I'd want to like get to know him, be buddies.
Robin Williams, the comedian.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
So have you watched a lot of his work?
There's been several movies I've seen him in, and I've loved him in all of them, and I want to be his friend.
And have you been impacted by his passing?
It happened when I was really too young to really understand what that meant. But yeah, I am very sad. You know, I'm looking into it now, seeing how he seemed like such a joyful person, and he put out so much love, and he was just so deeply sad, and it makes me sad.
And does that bring an awareness of mental health issues, just knowing how deep his were?
Yeah, I mean, you never know who's
right
going through things, and I think maybe the people who are in pain put out the most love because they know what it's like to feel alone. Or
interesting.
hurt.
And then maybe they don't have enough left for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I love it when people surprise me. That was definitely a surprising answer. Thank you. Mira?
I mean, well, if we're going by soothing voice, Morgan Freeman.
Oh,
but
God, yes.
For me, I think I would want to have Jamila Jamil as a guest. She's an actress, but she's also an activist for women's rights, and she speaks a lot about how social media really damages body image, and she kind of talks about how your weight isn't your worth, and she's just incredibly powerful, and I would love to talk to her more.
So when you hear someone talk about social media and how it can affect your body image or your self-image or your self-love, does that sink in? Do you take that in, and does it change the way that you interact with social media? Do you have kind of more of a separation or a boundary around that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it kind of does help me refocus and realize like how it might be impacting me. Like I might not have thought about it for a while, so I can kind of reflect on it again and be like, hey, is this affecting me? Have I been letting myself be affected by this? So I think it's really helpful.
It can help you reframe.
Yeah.
For me, spreading awareness through social media is my favorite thing about it. I love making posts regarding mental health. I love seeing other people do that. I think it's a great, great way for people to use their platforms. But for me personally, the messages don't sink in for me because I'm so deeply just self-deprecating. I compare myself to other people so much, and I have a lot of trouble not doing that. So I spread all this stuff, but I guess maybe I don't practice what I preach in a way.
Do you feel like there's a way that you could start to shift that? Like, do you seek out ways to listen to more activists, to listen to more, you know what I mean? Hear those words over and over of how it can be self-deprecating, the social media aspect?
I've definitely been, I've been getting better with it. I've been trying to work on it. It's definitely still something I'm struggling with, but I'm moving in the right direction, I think.
So would either of you consider getting off of social media for a period of time or taking a hiatus?
It was beneficial in, I think, a lot of ways when I did do that, and I'd totally do it again.
Yeah, I've taken short breaks with social media before, and I have also limited my social media, so I don't have Snapchat, I just have Instagram. And I think it would be harder for me to do that now just because I'm so engaged on social media, and I kind of have to be on social media for my volunteer work. And so it's kind of like a struggle because social media has also become where my passion is, where my work is, and so it's harder to just disconnect from that.
Absolutely. So tell me this. During this interview, at what point did you think about your phone?
I don't know what point exactly, but I did think about it.
Did you, like, checking in on it?
Yeah, like, I think maybe my phone is off, but I heard it, like, vibrate a little bit, and then I was like, oh, I wonder what that is.
And did you feel your body kind of shift, like you wanted to check what was going on?
I mean, I was curious for a second, but I wasn't like tweaking out, twitching,
Sure.
sweating,
Did you let it go right away?
Yeah, it wasn't, wasn't a big deal.
Uh-huh.
For me, it wasn't something that crossed my mind. I am pretty used to having my phone turned off during school, during meetings, during presentations, like where I really at school you can sneak a look, but like for presentations and meetings I couldn't if I wanted to. So I'm kind of used to getting in this mindset of like, okay, I'm not going to be able to access my phone for a few hours and I don't really think about it.
Yeah, so you have experience with that. Really, when we get experience with something, it becomes normal. And when something becomes normal, it's real for us, right? And we can easily do it. It's such a beautiful thing to actually get disconnected because we rarely are able to. We have connectivity anywhere we are. And so when you go places where you have to turn it off, I even experienced this myself. For the first, probably 6 hours, I'm kind of automatically thinking about checking my phone and I'm so used to that habit. And then once that habit breaks, it's this serenity that I don't normally get to experience. Even when I leave my phone at home and I go, to the grocery store or whatever, there's times where I'll think about it. I'll be like, oh, do I have my phone? Or I'll reach for it and it's not there. But when I go to places where there's no connectivity and no internet, I get to such a deep level of myself and my soul. It's like I talk to a person that I don't get to talk to every day, and it's really special. So someday, if you all get there again and you go to, we live in the Pacific Northwest, there's plenty of places we can go camp and get into nature and the wilderness to get away from that. But you'll remember this conversation when you start talking to that deep person in your soul. You'll come back to this, I'm sure.
I think a big part of it is if it's something like when I decided to do it, I was doing it alone. So I still went to school and everyone was on their phones. That's a constant reminder of they're checking my phone, I want to check mine. But if it's in a setting where you are camping and there's no service and no one has their phones, it's so much easier to forget.
You actually just have to turn it off.
Yeah.
And then it's gone. It's really, I want that for everyone. I think I said one time, I was coming back from Brighton Bush and I said, we can save the world if for 4 hours every day, there's zero internet. So every day for 4 hours, people just have to be with themselves and no phone, and they will interact with themselves differently, and they'll actually get deeper into their thoughts without distractions. And I really think that could change our world. There's pros and cons to everything, but I definitely think there's a pro to getting quiet within yourself and hearing what you have to say. So real quick, I'm just going to say who my dream guest right now would be, because I have several. But right now I'm on the kick of Dan Levy. Do you know who he is? Have you heard of a little show called Schitt's Creek?
No.
Yes.
You have? Have you seen it, Mira?
No, I haven't, but I almost started it.
Say that again.
I've almost started it.
Ooh, it's a good one. Dan Levy is the co-creator, writer, producer, and actor in Schitt's Creek. And his message watching this show unfold is such a message of love and inclusivity and unity, and just watching people grow. And that's my whole theme of fluidity, because the more rigid we get, the less supported we are as a community. But the more fluid we become, the more we have inclusivity for all, right? And so I really take that theme from this show, and it's hilarious. It's really funny. The character development is fantastic. And his story, here's Beezus the Brave again. The way that he tells his story as a pansexual, by the way, is just really beautiful. And it's the kind of wild heart revolution that I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for people opening their hearts to love and getting out of this divisiveness and really being more inclusive with each other and trying to understand each other in a different way rather than it's me versus you or it's you versus them. And I think that can really start to shift the world as well. How do you both feel about that?
I agree with that. And I think that's a really eye-opening viewpoint. I also think, it's a sitcom, right?
It is a sitcom. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest sitcoms I've ever seen.
Hana loves sitcoms, so I'm surprised she hasn't seen it yet.
I'm surprised too. I feel like I just turned you on to something amazing. I get obsessed with Dan every once in a while, and he's been giving a lot of speeches lately, and his speeches are really inspiring, and they're really just filled with love. I think that we need so much of that right now. Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you. I really want to feel what's happening in your generation and how you're viewing the world in the future. And it's been such an eye-opening and wonderful time and great conversation. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to do this.
Oh, me too. This has been an episode that I've been looking forward to ever since you agreed to do it. So here we are. And Beezus the Brave has hung out for a big portion of the episode. She's a little healer cat. Okay, so with that, we will sign off. Let's all continue to normalize the struggles, celebrate the quirks, and lean into the light. From myself and Beezus the Brave, happy Wild Heart Revolution, friends. Hey, isn't it? Snaps.
Or just rubbing your face.
Ooh, girls. Thank you.
I need to pee.
Yeah, that was a long one, huh?
I could definitely go for a burrito right about now.
Oh my god, that
Camping.
sounds so good.